Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift without saying a word? That's not coincidence, that's power. There's something about you they can't explain, can't define, and definitely can't ignore. It unsettles them, fascinates them, pulls them closer while they pretend to look away. Your presence speaks louder than noise. Your silence echoes deeper than chaos. They don't understand it. And that's exactly why they're drawn in. Tonight, we're diving into that mysterious force you carry, the kind that turns heads, sparks curiosity, and makes the world watch. Even when you do nothing at all, there's a kind of language that doesn't rely on sound, grammar, or carefully chosen phrases. It moves before you even realize it's happening, flowing through your posture, your gaze, the way you enter a space, and the way you choose to exist in it. People feel it instantly. Before you ever introduce yourself, before a single word leaves your mouth, something about you has already spoken. That silent expression, your energy, carries a message more honest than anything you could rehearse. It reveals confidence or doubt, calm or chaos, certainty or hesitation, and it does so without asking for permission. Band. You might think words are what convince people, but the truth is, words only confirm what your presence has already suggested. If your energy is uncertain, no amount of powerful language can fully cover it. On the other hand, when your energy is grounded, composed, and intentional, even the simplest words carry weight. A quiet hello from someone with strong presence can feel more impactful than a long speech from someone who lacks it. That's because energy is felt, not analyzed, and people trust what they feel far more than what they hear. And there's also something undeniably powerful about restraint. In a world where everyone is trying to be louder, faster, and more noticeable, the person who doesn't rush to fill silence stands out in a different way. Silence, when backed by strong energy, isn't empty. It's loaded. It creates curiosity. It makes people lean in, wonder, and try to understand. Instead of chasing attention, you become the one attention naturally moves toward. You don't demand it, you attract it. And that shift from chasing to attracting is where real influence begins. Your energy is also shaped by how you see yourself. If you carry doubt internally, it leaks into your presence, no matter how hard you try to hide it. But when you start to believe in your own value, not in a loud, boastful way, but in a quiet, unshakable way, it changes everything. Your movements become more deliberate. Your reactions become more controlled. You stop over-explaining, over-proving, over-performing. There's a sense of ease that comes from knowing you don't need to convince anyone of who you are. That ease is what people pick up on, even if they can't explain it. Another layer of this is emotional control. Energy isn't just about confidence, it's about stability. People are drawn to those who aren't easily shaken, who don't react impulsively, who maintain composure, even when things get intense. That kind of presence feels safe and powerful at the same time. It signals strength without aggression, control without force. When others are chaotic, your calm becomes magnetic. When others are loud, your quiet becomes commanding. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about mastering them so they don't control how you show up. There's also a certain unpredictability that makes energy even more compelling. When people can't fully read you, they pay more attention. Not in a deceptive way, but in a way that keeps your depth hidden beneath the surface. You don't reveal everything at once. You don't react in expected ways. That unpredictability creates intrigue, and intrigue keeps people engaged. It makes your presence feel layered, like there's always more beneath what's visible. Down at the core of all this is authenticity. Energy can't be faked for long. People might not consciously detect it, but they feel when something is off. Real presence comes from alignment, when what you feel, what you think, and how you act are all in sync. That alignment creates a kind of clarity that others can sense immediately. It's not about being perfect, right? And it's about being real in a way that doesn't seek approval. And when you reach that point, your energy doesn't just speak. It resonates in a way that words never could. There's a reason people are drawn to what they can't fully understand. When everything about a person is obvious, predictable, and easily explained, the mind quickly loses interest. But when there's a layer of mystery, something just out of reach, it activates curiosity in a way that's almost impossible to ignore. It makes people observe more closely, think more deeply, and invest more attention trying to figure out what's beneath the surface. That's where magnetism begins, not in being loud or overly expressive, but in knowing what not to reveal. Most people believe attraction comes from showing more personality, more opinions, more details about their life. But often, it's the opposite. When you reveal everything too quickly, you remove the sense of discovery. There's nothing left for people to explore. Nothing that keeps them wondering. Mystery creates space, and in that space, curiosity grows. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about understanding that not everything needs to be explained all at once. Depth is far more compelling when it unfolds gradually. Part of being mysterious is controlling your reactions. When someone expects a certain response and you don't give it to them, it shifts the dynamic instantly. It forces them to rethink their assumptions about you. Instead of being easily read, you become someone who requires attention to understand. That doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being intentional. You choose when to speak, how much to say, and when to simply observe. That level of control creates a quiet power that people can feel, even if they can't define it. And there's also a strong connection between mystery and confidence. People who are constantly explaining themselves often do so because they feel the need to be understood or validated. But when you're comfortable with who you are, you don't feel that pressure. You're okay with not everyone fully getting you. In fact, you expect it. That mindset removes the need to overshare or overprove, and it naturally creates a sense of intrigue. When you're not chasing understanding, people start chasing it from you. Another element is unpredictability, not in a chaotic way, but in a controlled, intentional way. When your behavior isn't repetitive or overly obvious, people stay engaged because they don't know exactly what to expect. You might be calm in situations where others would react, or you might speak up at moments when silence is expected. That keeps your presence interesting. It prevents people from placing you into a simple category. And once someone can't categorize you easily, they pay more attention. Mentioned silence plays a powerful role in this as well. Most people rush to fill every gap in conversation, afraid that silence will make things awkward. But silence, when used correctly, creates tension and focus. It makes your words feel more deliberate when you do speak. It also gives others space to project their own thoughts onto you, which often works in your favor. People tend to fill in the blanks with their own assumptions, and those assumptions can amplify your presence far beyond what you've actually said, planned. There's also a certain elegance in restraint. You don't need to respond to everything, react to everything, or reveal your opinion on every situation. Choosing not to engage can sometimes be more powerful than engaging. It shows that you're not easily pulled into distractions or influenced by external noise. Shows that selective engagement makes your attention feel valuable, and people naturally become more aware of when they have it and when they don't. And at its core, Mystery is about balance. It's not about being distant or unapproachable. It's about maintaining a sense of depth that isn't immediately accessible. Parapol. You allow people to see parts of you, but not the whole picture all at once. That gradual unfolding keeps interactions dynamic and engaging. It turns your presence into something that people don't just notice, but something they think about long after you're gone, trying to piece together what makes you so difficult to fully define. There's a unique kind of power in silence that most people underestimate. In a world where everyone is competing to be heard, the one who doesn't rush to speak instantly shifts the atmosphere. Silence, when it comes from uncertainty, feels awkward, but when it comes from control, it feels commanding. It creates a presence that doesn't beg for attention yet, somehow receives it anyway. People begin to notice you not because you're the loudest in the room, but because you're the most deliberate. Bondier. When you choose silence instead of reacting immediately, you gain something most people give away too easily: control over the moment. Instead of being pulled into the rhythm of others, you set your own pace. Conversations slow down around you. People become more aware of their own words, more careful with what they say. Your lack of urgency forces others to adjust, and without saying anything, you've already influenced the dynamic. That's what makes silence powerful. It shifts control without confrontation. There's also an element of unpredictability in silence. When someone speaks constantly, their patterns become easy to read. People can anticipate their responses, predict their behavior, and eventually lose interest. But when you don't reveal everything right away, when you allow pauses to exist, you create a sense of curiosity. Others start paying closer attention, trying to interpret your thoughts, wondering what you'll say next, or if you'll say anything at all. That uncertainty keeps them engaged in a way that constant talking never could. Silence also gives your words more weight. When you speak less, each word carries more significance. People listen more carefully because they know you don't speak without intention. There's no filler, no unnecessary noise, just clarity. Hauk. This contrast makes 6 even simple statements feel impactful. It's not about saying something complex or dramatic. It's about saying something meaningful at the right moment. Timing becomes your advantage, and silence is what allows you to choose that timing instead of rushing into it. Then another layer of this is emotional control. Silence allows you to process before reacting. Instead of letting emotions dictate your responses, you create space to think, to observe, to decide how you want to show up. This makes you less reactive and more intentional. People notice that stability. They see that you're not easily triggered, not easily shaken. That calmness becomes a form of strength, one that doesn't need to prove itself loudly. In tense situations, while others lose control, your silence becomes a signal that you're still grounded. Band. There's also a psychological effect that silence creates. When you don't fill every gap, others feel compelled to do it themselves. They start talking more, revealing more, sometimes even over-explaining. Without trying, you gain more information, more insight into how people think and what they value. Silence becomes a tool for observation. Instead of always being the one expressing, you become the one understanding, and that gives you an advantage in any interaction. Blah. At the same time, silence creates a kind of presence that feels intentional rather than accidental. It's not about being distant or disconnected. It's about choosing when to engage and when to step back. You're fully aware, fully present, but not constantly reacting. That balance makes your presence feel grounded. People sense that you're not trying to impress or dominate. You're simply there, steady and composed. That kind of energy stands out because it's rare land. There's also confidence in not needing to prove yourself through constant speech. When you're secure in who you are, you don't feel the need to fill space just to be noticed. Last, you're comfortable letting moments exist without interruption. That comfort translates into authority. It signals that you don't rely on external validation to feel significant. Instead of chasing attention, you allow it to come naturally, and it often does, precisely because you're not forcing it. And over time, this kind of controlled silence builds a reputation. People begin to associate your presence with depth, with thoughtfulness, with intention. They know that when you do speak, it matters. They start to listen differently, with more focus and respect. Your silence becomes part of your identity, not as an absence of communication, but as a refined way of expressing power without noise, influence without effort, and control without needing to say a single word. Not everyone is going to understand you, and trying to make sure they do is where most people lose their edge. There's a natural instinct to explain yourself, to be seen clearly, to make sure no one misinterprets your intentions. But that instinct, when taken too far, dilutes your presence. The moment you start adjusting yourself just to fit into someone else's understanding, you trade authenticity for approval. And approval, while comforting in the moment, comes at the cost of something far more valuable: your uniqueness. There's a quiet strength in being misunderstood and not rushing to correct it. It doesn't mean you're pretending or hiding. It means you're selective about where your energy goes. Not every opinion deserves your response. Not every judgment requires your defense. When you stop reacting to every misunderstanding, you create a boundary, one that protects your focus and preserves your identity. People may label you, misread you, or try to simplify you into something they can easily grasp, but you're not obligated to fit into their definitions. In fact, being difficult to fully understand often works in your favor. When people can't easily categorize you, they pay more attention. They observe more closely, trying to piece together who you are. That attention, even when mixed with confusion, creates a kind of magnetism. It pulls people in because there's something unresolved, something they haven't quite figured out yet. Instead of being overlooked, you become a subject of curiosity, and curiosity keeps you relevant in a way that full clarity sometimes cannot. And there's also a deeper level to this: self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't rely on constant validation from others to feel secure. You don't need everyone to agree with you or understand your choices. You know your direction, and that clarity within you replaces the need for external approval. This doesn't make you closed off. It makes you grounded. You can listen to others without being influenced by every opinion. You can take feedback without losing your sense of self. That balance is what allows you to remain steady, even when others don't fully get you. Another important aspect is, when you depend on others to understand you, in order to feel comfortable, you give them control over your emotional state. Their confusion becomes your frustration. Their judgment becomes your insecurity. But when you accept that not everyone will understand you, and you're okay with that, you take that control back. You become less reactive, less affected by external perceptions. Your stability no longer depends on how accurately others interpret you. There's also a certain confidence in letting people think what they want. It shows that you're not easily shaken by opinions. You're not constantly monitoring how you're perceived or adjusting your behavior to manage impressions. That kind of confidence is subtle but powerful. It tells people that your identity isn't fragile. You don't need constant reassurance because you already know who you are. And that certainty, even when unspoken, is something people can feel. At the same time, this doesn't mean you isolate yourself or avoid meaningful connections. It simply means you're selective about where you invest your energy. With the right people, those who are genuinely interested in understanding, you can open up, share more, and build deeper connections. But you don't do it out of pressure, you do it out of choice. That distinction changes everything. Your openness becomes intentional rather than reactive. There's also a sense of freedom that comes with this mindset. When you stop trying to be fully understood by everyone, you remove a constant source of pressure. You no longer feel the need to explain every decision, justify every action, or align with every expectation. You move more naturally, more confidently, without the weight of constant self-explanation. That freedom allows your true personality to come through. Not filtered, not adjusted, just real. Over time, people begin to recognize this consistency. They may not fully understand you, but they respect the fact that you're not easily influenced or defined by others. Your presence becomes associated with authenticity, with strength, with a kind of quiet independence that doesn't seek approval. Most people think attention comes from trying harder, speaking louder, showing more, constantly proving their worth. But real attention doesn't work like that. The more you chase it, the more it slips away or loses its value when you finally get it. There's a difference between being noticed and being remembered. Effort can make you visible for a moment, but authenticity is what makes you stay in people's minds long after you're gone. Land. When you're authentic, there's a natural alignment in everything you do. Your words, your actions, your energy, they all match. There's no performance to maintain, no mask to adjust depending on who you're around. That consistency creates trust, even on a subconscious level. People may not always be able to explain why they're drawn to you, but they feel that what they're seeing is real. And in a world full of exaggeration and pretense, realness stands out immediately. And trying to force attention often leads to overcompensation. People start talking more than they need to, sharing more than they should, reacting more than the moment requires. It creates noise, and noise might attract eyes temporarily, but it rarely creates respect. In fact, it can do the opposite. It makes your presence feel scattered, unpredictable in a way that lacks control. Authenticity, on the other hand, is grounded. It doesn't need to be loud to be felt. It carries a quiet confidence that draws people in without demanding anything from them. There's also a certain ease that comes with being authentic. You're not constantly thinking about how you're being perceived or adjusting your behavior to fit expectations. That mental freedom allows you to be more present, more focused, more aware of your surroundings, and that presence itself becomes attractive. People can sense when someone is fully there, not distracted by self-doubt or the need to impress. That level of comfort creates an environment where others feel at ease as well. Lambda. Authenticity also builds a stronger kind of connection. When you're not trying to appeal to everyone, you naturally resonate more deeply with the right people. Instead of spreading your energy thin trying to gain broad approval, you create meaningful impact with those who genuinely align with you. That kind of connection is more lasting and more valuable than surface-level attention. It's not about how many people notice you. It's about how deeply you're felt by the ones who do. Another important aspect is that authenticity removes the fear of being found out. When you're pretending or exaggerating, there's always a pressure to maintain that image. You become cautious, guarded, always aware that any inconsistency might expose the act. But when you're real, there's nothing to maintain. What people see is what they get. That transparency creates a sense of stability in your presence. You're not shifting based on the environment. You're consistent, And that consistency builds credibility over time. Lens. There's also a subtle power in not needing validation. When your sense of worth comes from within, you don't rely on attention to feel important. You're not performing for approval. And that changes how people perceive you. Instead of someone seeking attention, you become someone who has it naturally. That shift in perception is significant. People are more drawn to those who don't seem desperate for recognition because it signals confidence and self-sufficiency. Bland. At the same time, authenticity doesn't mean revealing everything or having no boundaries. It means being honest about who you are while still maintaining control over what you choose to share. It's a balance between openness and self-respect. You're real, but you're also intentional. That combination creates depth, something that keeps people interested because there's more to you than what's immediately visible. Manned over time. This approach creates a different kind of presence. Instead of being someone who constantly seeks attention, you become someone who naturally holds it. People notice you not because you're trying to stand out, but because you don't need to. Your energy feels grounded, your actions feel genuine, and your presence feels effortless. And that effortlessness is what makes authenticity so powerful. It doesn't demand attention. It earns it without ever asking. There's a level of influence that doesn't come from speaking louder, asserting dominance, or forcing control. It comes from simply being present in a way that shifts everything around you. Most people underestimate how much impact their presence alone can have. They believe power only shows up through action, or words, but real power often reveals itself before either of those happen. The moment you walk into a space, something changes. The tone adjusts, attention subtly redirects, and without announcing it, you've already influenced the environment. This kind of presence isn't accidental. It's built on awareness of yourself, of others, and of the moment. When you're fully aware, you're not reacting blindly or following the energy of the room. Instead, you observe first. You take in the dynamics, the conversations, the unspoken tensions. That awareness gives you an advantage because you're not just participating, you're understanding. And once you understand, you can choose how to position yourself in a way that naturally shifts the balance. One of the most powerful aspects of presence is composure. When situations become intense or unpredictable, most people respond emotionally. They rush, they react, they try to regain control through force or urgency. But the person who remains composed stands out immediately. That calmness sends a signal that you're not overwhelmed, not pressured, not easily influenced. It creates a sense of stability that others unconsciously respond to. In moments where control seems uncertain, your composure becomes the new center of gravity. There's also a subtle authority in stillness. Movement and noise often signal effort, but stillness signals control. When you don't feel the need to constantly adjust, interrupt, or assert yourself, it shows that you're comfortable holding your ground. That comfort translates into influence because it changes how others interact with you. They become more measured, more aware, more intentional. Your stillness slows the pace around you, and in that slower pace, you gain more control over how things unfold. Another layer of this is intention. Presence without intention can go unnoticed. But when you're deliberate about how you show up, it becomes impactful. Every movement, every glance, every word, or lack of words, carries meaning. You're not acting randomly. You're choosing your responses carefully. That intentional behavior creates a sense of precision. People begin to recognize that there's thought behind what you do, and that recognition builds respect. They start to pay closer attention because they know nothing about your presence is accidental. Blamed. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you rely on presence instead of force. Instead of trying to control others directly, you influence how they feel and respond. Your calm can reduce tension. Your focus can redirect attention. Your silence can create space for others to reveal more than they intended. This indirect form of influence is often more effective because it doesn't trigger resistance. People don't feel pushed. They feel guided, even if they're not aware of it. Mental confidence plays a central role here as well, but not the loud, performative kind. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. When you're secure in your position, you don't feel the need to dominate conversations or assert control over every detail. You allow things to unfold, stepping in only when necessary. That restraint makes your actions more impactful when they do happen. Instead of constant involvement, your selective engagement gives weight to your presence. There's also a connection between presence and boundaries. When you know your value, you don't allow yourself to be pulled into every situation or influenced by every opinion. You choose where to invest your energy. That selectiveness creates a sense of importance around your involvement. When you engage, it matters. When you don't, it's noticed. This dynamic naturally shifts power because it changes who is seeking attention and who is granting it. Long over time, this kind of presence builds a reputation that speaks before you do. People begin to associate you with control, with clarity, with a kind of quiet authority that doesn't rely on force. They adjust their behavior around you, often without realizing why. The environment adapts to your presence because you're not blending into it. You're shaping it, and all of that happens without needing to announce yourself, without needing to dominate, without